All right, so we have new numbers out now, taking a look at our employment situation. 1.4 million Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week. This is a continuous decline, though, so it's sort of good news, a continuous decline from the week prior. That's according to the Labor Department. The numbers come as states across the country, of course, are starting to reopen, economies are starting to reopen, and quarantine measures are relaxing. So we want to bring in Francis, Stacy, to talk a little bit more about these numbers. So these numbers, Francis, as I understand it, are for people who are applying for unemployment for the very first time, which I guess would mean that, whatever businesses they work for, they've been able to survive thus far. And something is occurring where at this point these individuals are finding themselves without a job. So give us an idea of, what this means, because kind of the upshot is there's fewer people finding themselves without a job than the week before and the week before that.
Well, it's still remaining quite elevated at, over a million filing new claims. And it remains to be seen with all of the potential data errors, which states have backlogs that are participating to some of that number. But yes, it's true. I mean, I think, it's industry by industry by industry, by city, by city, by state, by state. The mattress company might survive in one state and not survive in another state. The bulk of the unemployment claims, of course, came from California, and that makes sense. They're still on lockdown. So that's the thing. And then we look at that. So that's sort of, it's kind of flattening, but it's remaining elevated. I think what's interesting is that the markets will react, I think, quite negatively if this new uptick in viruses and if, discussions of further lockdown or people just deciding on their own to stay at home or shelter in place. If this curve, instead of seeing a decline every single week, actually sees an increase, I think that that's where you're going to have a significant reaction to the jobless numbers.
And that's a question that I had for you, Francis, overall. I mean, and this is why it might be interesting to read the tea leaves with regards to how analysts on the street are looking at the current situation that we're in versus our politicians who, feel, even as these numbers spike, that they're not going to change the reopening of their respective states. Let's talk at the governor level. I do wonder, as these numbers continue to climb, as more people get sick, as the number inches closer to the 200,000 dead that some doctors are predicting by the fall, what that will mean for the economy. What are analysts doing? How are they assessing the risk to the economy in that worst case scenario?
So I think analysts are just saying that companies with strong balance sheets, companies that are able to borrow for, a couple of tenths of basis points because they have such strong balance sheets, obviously the FAME or the FANG stocks, depending on, which companies you include. We've added Microsoft in there. But the thing is that these companies are going to remain strong. And so analysts are looking at that. They're saying it's a little bit pricey, so they're changing their weighting just slightly. They're going to look, obviously, the cyclical rotation just really kind of faded out, and value stocks continue to struggle. They're trying to pick specific names. I heard AT&T, and I'm not making a security recommendation, but I heard AT&T this morning, good dividend, business is doing just fine, those types of companies. Volatility remains heightened, and definitely the stock market's going to remain choppy. So I think they're looking at this from a stock market perspective, and they're watching to see how the virus uptick actually affects the futures, which obviously this perspective is so disconnected with what's really happening out there on Main Street. Wall Street is more disconnected than ever. And I think Main Street is relying on, secondary government stimulus, which remains to be seen if they can get something through. I mean, my advice, of course, on this show every week is split the difference and get it through. Take some of the political hot buttons out of it to increase the probability that it's going to pass. And then, as you say, from a governor perspective, we just don't know. Should you lock everyone down again? And is that going to prove to be the winning strategy? Or should you let people decide for themselves? Impossible to tell. And also the demographics are so different from state to state to state, just impossible to tell what the final outcome is going to be. And I think that that's what's weighing upon them at this moment.
Yeah, when you talk about the relief package, often we talk about, supporting businesses and industries, but then, I think about the individual people, and so many people, the only reason they're able to get by on unemployment now is because of that extra $600. These are people who never imagined in their life that they would be going down to the unemployment office or getting online. So that $600 is scheduled, though, to end, I think, in July 31st. What's your fear if they do not extend it?
Well, it's going to, from the data perspective, it's going to be interesting to see how many more people go on the list of furloughed mortgages and furloughed credit payments, et cetera. I think that will give us an early indication as to how it will really affect people, which is nice. And I don't know, again, for me, I would just extend it, particularly with the virus count coming up. And, some of the micro data where they've noticed that reservations in restaurants that are actually open have actually just gone down as the virus has ticked up, because people are just determining for themselves that they're going to stay at home. And also it's kind of, moving into the younger population. So the older population seems to be being more careful and the younger population isn't. So you're seeing an uptick in virus cases in the younger population. How dire that becomes or what the consequences are, of course, remain to be seen. But I just think that it's prudent to extend it, just given the fact that the virus is still present. Now, some critics would say that it keeps people from getting back on payrolls and getting back to jobs. And it's just too hard to tell what particular sections of the economy is that really occurring and to what degree that's occurring. So the safer side is just to extend it and wait until we get more of a read on what the virus is going to look like throughout the summer.
Really, really great insight. As always, Frances, Stacy, I really do appreciate when you come on our show to talk to us about this stuff, because you really do bring it down to the level that people can understand, and it's not so wonky. And so we always appreciate that clarity. Thank you.
I appreciate it too. Thanks, guys.